reason why I'm sharing this with you is because now I know what human rights, social justice, and civil rights is all about. And I've come on this tour that in these few minutes, when you walk out of here, you're going to have a new understanding of your call to get in the freedom movement and run your race until your work is done when you go to the other side. So I welcome you into the space. Those who are my singers, come on up here and join me. Now I have voluntary singers and then I have involuntary singers that I'm going to volunteer. So you can start off with the voluntary ones. Come up here and join me. Come on, quickly. Pop like, as they say in the church, pop like popcorn, children. Yeah. Okay, give me 3 men, because we got some testosterone up in here. Yes, give me 3 men. We need enough men. Come on, you can come on up here. Weren't you coming?
I was letting them out of the...
Oh, is that right? Well, you come on up here and join. And because this young man has you with the red, the yellow, and the look like, man, you really got it going on over there. Come on up here. I need a female male. I don't know what it is about it, everybody. When I ask visitors to come up here, the women all and the girls all go right here, the boys and the men go over here. Okay, what's up with that? Okay, mix up girl boy, girl boy. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, that's the reality of life, y'all. We've got to intermingle ourselves. Okay, everybody give the choir some love. All right, so I have these little instruments. You want to take an egg? Who like the tambourine? Those are little crackers. You know how to use those?
I'll take the tambourine.
You'll take the tambourine? All right. Eggs, shakers. All right, everybody. I just want you all to know that in the church, this song that I'd like for us to always sing on this tour was a favorite during the Montgomery bus boycott and the 1960 civil rights movement. It was sang during the mass meetings and protests, but it is a song I sing on these tours because that's who every one of us are on the planet. Anybody in here doesn't know this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. That's good, because all of us have heard it. Okay, here we go, choir. We're rocking to the right, but I want everybody to sing. This little light of mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. That means slightly part your feet, relax, shake it out. Inhale, exhale. That was for my benefit. You all, I want you to, in the honor of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mrs. Coretta Scott King, whose presence is so great and their light was so bright, it has brought us here today. So I want you all to take a few moments and channel this quote with me and recite after me, okay? And give it your passion as your channel in their spirit. I have a dream.
I have a dream.
One day. My 4 little children. Will live in a nation. Where they will not. Be judged. By the color of their skin. By the content. Of their character. Everybody in the sanctuary, stand up and recite after me. I have a dream. That one day, the state of Alabama. I'm just messing with Alabama. Come on, y'all. This nation will rise up and women. Say, and women. And everybody are created equal. Yay! All right, have a seat. If you all may now have a seat. Yeah. Awesome. Everybody, I want you to know that this little church that you're sitting in right now was established in 1877. And it came out of what I call the White First Baptist Church that's takes up the block of Perry, Lawrence Street in middle downtown. But during slavery, the enslaved attended the same worship service with the plantation owners. So in 1865, when slavery was abolished, with what amendment, somebody? The 13th Amendment. So when it was officially abolished, the now free people, African Americans of that congregation said, we want our own church. So they then, to make a long story short, established what was first called Columbus Street Baptist Church. That ironically is across the street, Miss Boyd, from our Montgomery Police Department. God has a sense of humor. But I want you to know that in 1867, that church was established. And the first structure of that church burned down in the early 1900s. So when they rebuilt the new church, they named it First Colored Baptist Church, and they had to put colored in there to identify from the white First Baptist, because money was getting mixed up at the bank. I think it was in their favor. So 10 years later, from 1867, that church was a mega church. They had over 5,000 members. That's a lot of people in 1877. So the more educated, wealthier ones of the community said, we want our own church, who were part of that membership. And so, welcome to Second Colored Baptist Church. First Colored Baptist, Second Colored Baptist. So, this church has historically had this legacy of being the little snooty church or upper class, and they liked it like that. Yes. And so, 28 pastors have pastored this church. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the 20th pastor of the church. Who knows what age Dr. King was when he came to this church? 20. Everybody say 25? 25. Yeah, he came to this church in officially in September 1954. And he was here almost 6 years until January 1960. 25 years of old. Mrs. Coretta Scott King was 2 years older than her husband. She was 27 when they came. You can imagine they were younger than most of the congregation of the church. But you talk about brilliant, kind, humble, had a sense of humor, wise, faith-filled, tenacious. That was them. And so you all are all here today, and I'm here because of the legacy that God put through them to lead out in this time, in this place. And it's continuing now from generation to generation. With that having been said, I want to give these out to various people. Let me give some of these that are sitting on the back row. And all of you come right up to the front who have, everybody who has one of those things, come right up to the front, if you will, please. So Dexter, Charles Atavius Booth was the first pastor of this church. In 1877, and Reverend Croswell Handy was the most recent pastor of the church. Dexter is now looking for a new pastor. So if you know somebody committed to the cause, yeah, so with that, everybody, because this church is a global landmark. I toured the chief of Fiji a few years ago, and I asked him to come to take a picture behind the podium, and he says, I don't feel worthy. I said, sir, I said, you are worthy. I say the same call that was on Dr. King's life is on yours right now. I'm saying that to every one of you in this sanctuary. The call that was on Dr. King and Mrs. Coretta Scott King's life is on your life right now. What is the call? To love and help somebody every day, and to do it with a nonviolent spirit. That means you're going to have to forgive somebody. You have to give up that last dollar you were trying to save for something. You're going to have to turn and give attention to somebody who needs you in the moment, somebody who needs you to listen, somebody who needs some type of help in some way, and you're the one. So you'll have to choose to accept the cost to answer the call of God for the cause of love. Did you hear that? Mm-hmm. To answer the call of God for the cause of love, we must do this work no matter the cost. So no matter the cost. So we'll start on this end. And these quotes that they are about to read to you, I want you to take these messages in because they are life lessons as well as the call, the answer to the call. So stay with me. And place the microphone to your mouth so that everybody can hear you. Really speak it as best you can, okay?
We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools.
And tell who wrote the quote.
Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Thank you, Pastor.
Science investigates, religion interprets. Science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion deals mainly with values. The two are not rivals. Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr.
Forgiveness is not an occasional act, it is a constant attitude. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. Chris Bucky.
The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Martin Luther King, Jr.
We must be the change we wish to see in the world. Muhammad Gandhi.
Freedom and justice cannot be parceled out in pieces to suit political convenience. I don't believe you can stand for freedom for one group of people and deny it to others. Coretta Scott King.
Our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about things that matter. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I must remind you that starving a child is violence. Suppressing a culture is violence. Neglecting school children is violence. Punishing a mother and her family is violence. Discrimination against a working man is violence. Ghetto housing is violence. Ignoring medical need is violence. Contempt for poverty is violence. Coretta Scott.
Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Thank you so very much. And you all can just pass those there and place them on the piano there. You all, I hope all of you all took in those messages. And you may have a seat now as well. You all give them some love. Yeah. You all, those messages are like prayers. Aren't they amazing? They're wonderful. Yes. Everybody recite after me. Struggle is a never-ending process.
Struggle is a never-ending process.
Freedom is never really won.
Freedom is never really won.
You earn it and win it in every generation. You also, who's up at bat now? We are. Every day, we're up at bat. Advocating. Raise your hand if you're an advocate for human rights, social justice. Raise your hand. Okay, and raise your hand if you're an activist for human rights and social justice. Okay, wonderful. Hey, everybody, let me clarify this for you. To be an advocate means you care for and about other people. Activism means that you do something to help other people. Will you raise your hand if you're an advocate and an activist? Everybody should have their, that's it, that is it. So for the rest of your life, everything you do every day means you're advocating and you're an activist. Because I don't know what jobs you hold or how you serve your communities or who you are as a person. You're an activist because you're doing something.
They're all teachers.
You're all teachers, honey. Y'all are some serious advocates and activists. Woo! Thank you for telling highest paid profession in the country. Yes. So I want to just thank you, but I want to say this to every one of you. The call, especially for you, is one that is really a call of commitment of love and service, no matter the cost, because every day you wake up and you're going into, and you are making a decision to fulfill and to cover and to educate all of our children and to help guide their lives so that they become productive citizens and kind citizens and productive citizens in a sense that nonviolence is the way. And so that's our work, and that's your work every day, is you're trying to help us be a better, loving, kind nation, and it does begin with educating our children. Parents have put a lot on your shoulders, but I want to say, you got the right help. You hear me? So you show up and show out every day you walk in that classroom, because every child may not get it, but the call is not for the many. It's for the one here and the one there. That's the call, you all. But the call is that you don't know who's going to end up going where. So you pour out to all of the children, because some of those children you thought, man, they were so bad. Some of them turn out to be leaders in the community. Even look at yourself and look where you have probably come from. And now here you are, a servant in the community. That's what you are. You're a community servant. And you all are world changers. Yes, you are. You may think, oh, I'm just a teacher. Oh, you're like a rock that's being thrown in the river. And you all, when it hits the water, you know how far it ripples out. You can't even count. That's who you all are. Every day. So I just want to say that to you. I know we have short time, but I want you to look at all of the, just a few issues we've got now, because we've got critical race theory issues going on in the schools. I want you to know, and I'm just saying, I'm writing a book, Miss Boyer called I'm Just Saying. So listen to this. I'm just saying that's crazy. And I told Legislator Oliver, who presented it here in the Alabama legislature, I said, sir, when that bill does not pass, don't take it hard, because it's a bad bill. And it didn't pass in the House, but who knows what's going to happen in the Senate. But I'm just saying, all of that's doing is frightening white teachers, telling because you talk about sex, race, and religion, you're going to be fired. Get out of here. That's history. That's our history. Do you all know that all history is our history? All history is connected. It's all connected. We are all connected. We are one race, the human race, and we got to train our children when they're young. We got to talk about these things, because, honey, they get children, they talk about, don't talk about sex. I'm just saying, you better get them young. Because when they get in middle school, honey, they off. They got it going on. And you know it. But I'm just saying to you all that this is the work I'm doing on these tours. I'm talking to the children with their teachers and parents right here. I'm talking about transgender children, because that's the highest suicide rate in America. Teenage girls are the second highest suicide rate. And I'm telling them, why should you go build another school for transgender children? To isolate them even more and make them feel less than even more. You don't do that. They're human beings like the rest of us. Every one of us are different. We're unique. Ask the people who live with you. So I'm just saying to all of you, let us step into a place where we support and love and try to have a heart of compassion. You all know it best. You have to be compassionate all the time, every day, to make right judgments about students and for the cause of things that are happening in the school system. Yeah. So I'm saying to you, let whatever decisions you're making on all of these issues of human rights and social justice, let it be with a foundation of love and compassion. Yeah, because everybody wants to be appreciated. The goal of humanity of every one of us is to love and be loved. Yeah, all of us want that. And we want to be appreciated for who we are. So you all, let us all continue to come to the table of brotherhood and sisterhood. Let us keep advocating and being an activist. And what that means is love God, the Creator. Love yourself. I was suicidal because I was busy comparing myself to you. I made you prettier. You were smarter, more gifted and talented. And inside I was saying, girl, you're not pretty. You're not smart. You dumb. That's what I was telling me. And I did it up until I was about 40 years of age. For no, longer than that. I must have been close to 50. Because I'm 65, about to turn 66. So I'm saying to you all, decide right now you are enough. And that you got what it takes. Don't compare yourself to another teacher, because nobody teaches like you do. Bring what your flavor is to the classroom. Because you can tell nobody to it like I do. Because this story is mine. Miss Boyer's story is hers. And we love each other for what we do in our work. Because the goal is the same. But how we get there, baby. Yeah, our goal is to rock the house every day. So I want to say to you, show up for you. Show up for God who created you and sent you here with purpose and has given you many gifts and talents. Don't think you just have one gift. You have many gifts and abilities. Let life help you to just keep on discovering the many, because that's what I'm doing. Once I got on the tours, I found out I was a teacher and a storyteller, and I liked doing it. Yeah, I love singing too, and so I brought that to my experience. Yeah. And I'm developing a sense of humor. So I just want to say to everybody, I bless you. Accept the cost, because the cost is worth the call. Yeah, for the cause of love. So I bless everybody. I know you all are now. Is that right?
Would I, but I'm sure there's questions about the church.
Yes.
So we'll do that.
Okay, so I want to just share with you all here, this church was established 1877, and the sanctuary you're sitting in was completed in 1889. So every pew you're sitting on and see is the original. Isn't that amazing? Now don't get it twisted, because there were not pads in 1889. Now they came in the 40s and 50s. But I do want you all to know that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., this pulpit furniture was purchased during his last excuse me. Let me turn that off. This furniture was purchased during his pastorate, and so he has preached from this lectern. He was 5'6" in height, everybody. He wasn't a tall man, just had a great personality and legacy. The pastor's chair at the far back wall, and here in the floor of the pulpit is the baptismal pool. The baptismal pool in the Baptist church, they believe in full body immersion. I'm in the Methodist church. We sprinkle a little water and send you on your way to Baptist church. Like, so if you can imagine 28 pastors preaching from this podium, and we've had Hillary Clinton, who ran for president a few years ago. She spoke here. Attorney Fred Gray, does his name sound familiar? You all give God glory, because he just received the Presidential Medal of Honor. Yes. Does the name Claudette Colvin sound familiar? Okay, wonderful. Her record was just expunged on December 16th, 2021, after 67 years on permanent probation. Yay! She's a cousin on my daddy's side of the family, Ms. Boyer. And so I thank God that Claudette, at 82 years of age, have been able to live long enough to see justice come for her. Okay, with that having been said, Mrs. Althea Thomas, the organist of Dexter. Mrs. Thomas is in her 90s now. Dr. King hired her June of 1955, and she's an amazing organist, but as she gets older, she doesn't come every Sunday anymore. But you talk about some kind of master on the keys. And when we were kids growing up here in Montgomery, she and her sister Gwendolyn Ligon, if you were proficient at the organ and piano, 9 times out of 10 you were taking lessons from them. So she is known in this city, in this town, and I'm so thankful she's still alive, still telling her story. With that being said, downstairs in the basement of the church, they're doing renovations now. But there are 3 major things I want you to know about there. One is Dr. King's office. I call it his office, but it's the pastor's study. And the desk is still there that he sat and wrote many sermons from. There's also a podium in the basement that during normal tour times, I would have you step up to the podium and say, "How long? Not long." Because it's the podium that Dr. King spoke from on March 25th, 1965, when the Selma to Montgomery March arrived to the Alabama State Capitol. He delivered that amazing speech that day. Yes. And so it is in the basement of the church. It has been thought about, some visitors have thought at one point that the church might donate it to the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. But if it were there, Ms. Boyer, they would have it cordoned off. Nobody would have access to it. So I like us being able to go up and do our little presentation there. I've had 4 gentlemen who did impersonations of Dr. King's speeches, and you should have heard them. Some of them really did sound like it. Yeah. But the third thing, other than the podium and the office, is the beautiful civil rights mural that spans the wall in the basement. Mr. John W. Fagan is still a member of this church. He came here under Dr. King's pastorate, and he's in his 90s as well. But he and 2 of his students painted a beautiful mural taking you from Mrs. Rosa Parks' arrest in 1955 through the story of Dr. King's assassination. So, unfortunately, they're having to work all of that out so the downstairs is off limits to visitors at this time. But this church is just an amazing church. So here, from 1877 of its inception to this very moment, it's still carrying the message of love and justice and peace and brotherhood. Excuse me. So I want to just say thank you. How much more time do we have, Ms. Boyd?
We were supposed to be there till 11 o'clock.
Oh, till 11?
Yeah, so we're good, but we can, you all have any questions for Wanda? Do you have any questions for Wanda? So,
well, good.
We'll take these pictures ourselves, if that's okay.
That would be just fine. Does anybody have any questions that she was asking?
How many active members still attend here?
Members?
How many active members are there still?
I'm going to tell you this. The church has dwindled, so it's less than 100. Maybe because of the location of the church, but membership have died out. We've had, I think it's about 6 or 7 people passed away in the past 8 months because they're in their 80s and 90s of the members here. So they are really dwindling now. I do want to just say that young people are not attending traditional churches anymore. And it's not only just a dilemma for this church, but I think all churches are trying to figure out, what are we doing? Some have closed. Others have developed traditional and contemporary services, but everybody's trying to figure it out. And once the pandemic hit, people really went home and have not come back to service, okay? And some may get on the stream with your stream on Facebook Live or whatever, but many people have just said, see ya. That's a good question you asked. Anybody else?
2 questions. How long did Pastor King serve, Dr. King serve as pastor?
He was here almost 6 years, from September 1954 till January 1960.
And what's the highest membership the church has seen?
The membership?
The highest that it's seen from the time that it started to now. What's the highest that it's seen the membership? What's the most members you've had?
Oh, okay. They at one time, because it comfortably seats 300 people here. So I'm going to say they were packed out after the Montgomery bus boycott. Over the years, going through the 1960s, after his death, it was packed out. But over the years, it began to decline. And it continues to decline. And every birthday celebration, every January, we've hosted the King birthday celebration here, commemoration, and it's always packed here for that event as well. The pandemic has created a different dynamic, however.
I was curious about during King's time here, if there was vandalism or things like that upon the church.
No, you all, that is so amazing to me. This church has never been physically damaged or attacked or bombed in any way. And I think that was one of the things that the membership set in order, because they were the upper middle class. When Dr. King was directing the Montgomery bus boycott out of the pastor's study downstairs, the church members certainly made it clear to him they did not want any mass meetings here. So you won't read that any ever took place here. They were at the church I grew up, Mount Zion, Holt Street, Beulah Baptist, Bethel, all of the other churches in the black community hosted mass meetings, not Dexter. But he was taking care of business from here.
Sorry. Yeah, I thought in the Nason had the first meeting with the government improvement station.
Yes, yes. But see, that's what I'm talking about. He directed the organizational business from the office. But a mass meeting was never held here.
Okay.
Saw the windows or original or.
Okay, so as you look at these stained glass, these vertical ones were replaced in 1979, 1980. The renovation was completed. And the tops of these sides, as well as up in the balcony and the stained glass in the vestibule, those are the originals from 1889. Oh, wow. As you can see, they tried to keep the replacements similar to the original stained glass that you see up top. For many years, I didn't see, most churches have some type of liturgical scenes in the stained glass. Dexter doesn't. But one of the teenagers some years ago was explaining to one of my tours, she said, when I was a kid, I didn't notice anything really special other than just the little squares. But she says, as I got older, I started seeing crosses. Who said that? You did. See, I had been toured here at least 4 years when she made that statement. And now when I look at them, I'm looking at crosses too. All of you see crosses now? Yeah. Did you see crosses before? No. No, but now I see crosses. The ceiling is a tin embossed ceiling that, tins rolled out and you press in the impression and then paint over it. So this is an original ceiling. The lighting in here is about 40 years old, maybe a little more during the renovation. But I love the Art Deco kind of design of the lighting because it melds nicely with the original design of the church. And in most churches, especially African American churches, you'll see banners. The wood looks like this, generally speaking. And what I found different was that they didn't have a kneeling rail. See, I grew up in the Methodist church, and we have a rail for you to go receive communion and pray. But they told me you pray, you kneel in your heart. So they distribute the elements, communion elements in this church. So I just said, okay, I get that. That's different. The piano is over 50, probably going on 60 years old, and the organ is over probably going on 60, 70 years now as well. But it's a pit. Sir, if you will, walk up those steps so they can see that organ is down in a pit. I went up there, I had knee surgery, and I called myself up, get down in there. And the tourists had to come get me out. Yeah, isn't that amazing? And to imagine Mrs. Thomas at 90-something, up until 90-some years of age, still coming in here, getting in and out. I've never seen her get in and out, so I'm not sure how she has perfected that. But that's pretty amazing to me.
That's a big deal.
Absolutely. Any other questions anyone have? Yes, sir.
Could you quickly discuss what brought King to Montgomery, why he left in '60? You also said there was never a mass meeting here. Did he ever win over his congregants to the movement?
Oh, that's a very good question. Those are very good questions. So now let's start with what brought him here. Dr. King was working on his PhD at Boston University. Everybody knew that, pretty much kind of knew that. But he was working on his PhD because he wanted the experience of pastoring his own church. Because his father, everybody called him Daddy King. Daddy King ran Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. But if you look at the history of it, Ebenezer Baptist Church in its demographic is very much like Dexter. They were the upper middle class of the community, and they were activists as well, because Daddy King and Dr. King's grandfather and great-grandfather had all pastored Ebenezer. And so, because they had also, Dr. King's father, Martin Luther King Sr., and the grandfather, Reverend A.D. Williams, had been president of the NAACP in Atlanta. Dr. King was already acclimated in activism. And he had had enough experiences watching his grandfather and father stand against the injustices in Atlanta. He said the police stopped Daddy King one day in the car, and the police called Daddy King a boy. And the Daddy King said, I don't see a boy any other than my son. And then Dr. King experienced it personally because the little white fella of a white company family owned a business across the street in that block, I guess, on Auburn Avenue. And he used to play with the little white boy. But when they got to be about 6 years of age, the little white boy tells him, we can't play together anymore. That's because his daddy had told him, you don't play with black people. And Dr. King is devastated because he loved the little boy. And he went home and told his mother and father, and they had to explain to him, that's the way life is. It's segregated life here for us, and black people and white people cannot engage. And Dr. King said he hated white people for a good while after that, but he came to understand as he grew. He studied. Dr. King was he was quite a thinker. He loved studying. He studied philosophy and theology because he wanted to know more about the mind and the thinking of man, and then what the mind of God was. And how are the two of these to go together? So by the time he comes to Dexter, he is preaching a social gospel. And I think they may have chosen, and Martha, you can help on this one if you know, how they chose Montgomery for sure. I can't say, but to think that Atlanta is here and Marion, Dr. King is from Hyberg, but Mrs. Coretta Scott King, but most people say Marion when you read the history books, but the name of her little town was Hyberg. And maybe this was a central spot. Maybe that was the tiebreaker. But he had received offers to teach at universities and other churches as well, but he chose Dexter. And I'm going to say, if you look at this history, y'all, you can truly see that this was the right decision and that it was the mind and heart of God. Because imagine how different our history would be had he not come to Montgomery. Our lives would be different.
I want you to tell them teachers about the night supposedly George Wallace came over to ask for forgiveness.
Okay, so let me back up. Peggy Sue Wallace Kennedy is Dr. King's daughter, and she's written a book called The Broken Road. I brought books today.
She's one of my speakers.
You're going to totally be immersed. Please buy this book. She has spoken to many of my groups, and Peggy tells the story that she believes this was the beginning of her daddy's conversion. She says that when he was shot in Laurel, Maryland in 1972 by Arthur Bremer, you all remember that story? And it paralyzed his spine because it severed the spine. So he was paralyzed. And while he was in the hospital there, Shirley Chisholm, who was running for president against him, and they were running against Richard Nixon, Shirley Chisholm wanted to stop and go visit him at the hospital, where a congresswoman, who is now Congresswoman Barbara Lee, was her assistant at the time. And Barbara Lee says, why are you going to stop the momentum of our campaign to go visit him? And Shirley Chisholm replied, there are some things that are not political. She went to visit Wallace, and Peggy says she believed that was the beginning of his transformation. On August 2nd, 1979, Governor Wallace was wheeled into this church. And he came in, and in essence, he told them, I now understand the pain I caused you. And I ask you to please forgive me. And I want you all to know he went on, they forgave him, and he went on to run for governor and won in 1980, what was it, 1983 he won? But he won with the black vote, because he was governor 4 times. And he ran his wife, Lurleen, even though she had cancer. He ran her for governor thinking, oh, I'm going to run it in the background. You all, Lurleen Wallace got in that position, and she found she loved being governor. And she started making changes in the conditions in our prisons, and her other goal was mental illness, mental health. And so she did pass away May of 1968. And so she passed away shortly after Dr. King was killed. You know, she died in May, he was killed in April. Who knows what date Dr. King was killed? April 4th, 1968. Yeah. And so with that, Governor Wallace he went on to apologize to John Lewis. He had John Lewis to kneel down to him. There was an account, because I read so many books, but he asked John Lewis to kneel down next to his wheelchair and bend his head down. And he was feeling John's head, because you know John Lewis had received a concussion in 1965 on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, right? But he also, when the Freedom Riders came here in 1961, he was hit in the head with a Coca-Cola crate. So when Wallace is feeling his head, he says, I caused that. I'm so sorry. Will you please forgive me? He asked Congressman John Lewis to forgive him as well. You all, I just want to say to all of us, for people who we think will never change, continue to pray and engage if you have an opportunity, because there may come a time that they will change. Mm-hmm. Who would have ever thought that Governor George Wallace would transform and come back and apologize? Yeah, many of my visitors that I've toured through these 8 years, they're amazed to hear that he did. But he did. And some people say, Ms. Wanda, do you think he really changed? I say, well, really, that's between he and God. But I said for the many people who were family or worked with him, etc., they believe he changed. His daughter, Peggy, believes her daddy did change.
Thank you so much.
Blessings to all of you. Blessings to all of you. Everybody, thank you. Go change the world.
And get your pictures, get on the bus, so we can go to our next stop on the right of the street. It takes a process to deal with the end.